This is the One Nerd Power.
In One Punch Man, Saitama's true source of power remains an enigma, with only limited explanations available. Initially, the idea that Saitama's immense strength came from simple workouts seemed like a punchline, but it appears there may be more to it. Dr. Genus provided a detailed account of how Saitama pushed beyond his limits through sheer determination, unlocking boundless strength at the cost of social isolation. This is no longer a laughing matter.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Spoiler alert.
The series has hinted several times at a possible connection between Saitama and God. Saitama has been referred to as the abominable fist that turned against God. According to Garou, if Saitama could master time travel, he would use God's power without taking his hand. In one of the cover pages, Saitama is depicted standing above a planet resembling God, echoing the image of God towering over the moon. Another clue surfaced during Saitama's fight with Garou. When Saitama was thrown to Io, one of Jupiter's moons, he remarked that something like that had happened before. At first glance, he might have been referencing his battle with Boros, who sent him to the Earth's moon. However, with Jupiter right in front of Saitama and Psychos noting the resemblance between God's body and Jupiter's surface, it's possible Saitama was actually recalling an encounter with God. Blast explained that God exists in a higher dimension and can transmit his power across dimensions without being hindered by distance, energy, or size. The degree to which these limitations are bypassed depends on the abilities of the person who receives God's power. It was noted that Homeless Emperor never seemed to get exhausted from using his energy spheres, suggesting that his power came from an external source. Compare this with how Saitama gained his strength. When Dr. Genus discussed why he abandoned his research, he explained that his original goal was to accelerate human evolution through artificial means. However, after meeting Saitama, he decided to give up his work and instead open a restaurant. According to Dr. Genus, every living being has an intrinsic limit to its growth, regardless of how much effort one puts in. Excessive power can become overwhelming, transforming the individual into a mindless, destructive creature. To prevent this loss of purpose and reason, God has imposed limits on the growth of all beings, known as a limiter. All creatures, whether heroes or monsters with special abilities, have a limit. But Saitama removed his limiter through sheer effort. This resulted in him gaining immense strength at the cost of losing his hair and becoming isolated from others. This is the most detailed account of Saitama's limitless strength provided in the series so far. Notably, Dr. Genus asserts that God is responsible for imposing the limiter on every being. In the original Japanese text, the term for God is kami, which is somewhat ambiguous and can refer to God, gods, or anything divine. The God, who has bestowed power on other characters and is likely the primary antagonist of the series, is also referred to as kami. Compare how Saitama obtained his strength with how God can grant power to individuals. Saitama removed his limiter through sheer effort. This aligns with the notion that the extent of power one can receive from God depends on their own abilities. During the battle between Saitama and Garou on the Jupiter moon, Garou continuously replicated Saitama's strength but still struggled to keep up as Saitama kept growing stronger. Even when Garou amplified his strength tenfold, Saitama's strength had already increased 100-fold. Despite this, Garou successfully mirrored Saitama's strength precisely but ultimately lost due to a slight delay. If those who receive power from God are borrowing it from him, then this suggests that God's power, similar to Saitama's, is also limitless. This leads us to question exactly what Garou was imitating from Saitama, given that his power originates from an external source. It seems as though Garou might have been copying Saitama's ability to draw more power from God. When questioned about the secret of his training, Saitama claimed to have achieved immense strength through a routine of simple exercises, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run every day. There's nothing special about Saitama's training, especially compared to the much more rigorous training routines of athletes and soldiers in real life. Of course, the One Punch Man series takes place in a world where, for example, someone can transform into a crab monster from eating too much crab. Despite this, Genos found it hard to believe that Saitama reached such a level of strength with basic training alone and concluded that Saitama himself might not fully understand the source of his power. Saitama is an anomaly that defies reason, even within the context of the One Punch Man universe. After all, heroes like Bang or Atomic Samurai trained far more intensively and for longer periods, yet none come close to Saitama's level of strength. Homeless Emperor is the first vessel of God introduced in the series, and he shares several similarities with Saitama. Prior to receiving power from God, Homeless Emperor was an ordinary person who became unemployed and, as a result, lost his will to live. He contemplated taking his own life, but God intervened and offered him power. It appears that Saitama hasn't met God, or at least he isn't aware of it if he has. The explanation for this could involve time travel. Saitama may simply not have encountered God in his current timeline yet. Blast's allies seem to be alternate versions of some of Saitama's past enemies, like Beast King and Boros, which suggests the existence of alternate timelines that may be explored further in the future. Saitama has already experienced time travel at the end of his battle with Garou. When he traveled back in time, his past and future selves merged. Some aspects from the future remained, such as the hole in his clothes from his fight with Garou and the duplicate of Genos' core. Saitama also grew stronger during his fight with Garou, and upon returning to the past, his earlier self likely retained some of that newfound strength. This parallels the moment when Saitama removed his limiter. Instead of gradually increasing his strength, he suddenly woke up one day to discover he had become much stronger and had lost his hair. This seems to align with how time travel operates in the One Punch Man universe. Saitama's hair loss was not merely the price he paid for his strength, it might be a remnant from an alternate future where he was much older. His hair loss can be compared to the hole in his pants, an aspect of the future persisting in the present. Additionally, Saitama's mannerisms mirror those of an older individual as he approaches everything at a relaxed pace. His dissatisfaction with his life as a hero stems from achieving his ultimate goals too quickly, leaving him without a meaningful journey. Saitama likens his life to a video game in which he's already reached the maximum level, and there's nothing left to accomplish. Moreover, he feels as though he started playing with a completed save state, unable to derive satisfaction from anything. In an alternate future, Saitama would have failed to achieve his goal of becoming so strong that he could defeat any opponent with a single punch. In time, God offered Saitama power, and he accepted. This doesn't mean Saitama was malevolent. God is known for deceiving people into accepting his power, as seen when he tried to impersonate Blast to convince Tatsumaki or posed as Bang to persuade Garou to take his hand. Eventually, Shibabawa's prophecy came true, resulting in a global catastrophe. To prevent this, Saitama had to travel back in time, just as he did after his battle with Garou. Manipulating time would be the only way to avert a prophecy from being fulfilled. This cycle might have repeated numerous times, with Saitama caught in a time loop, growing stronger with each iteration. Blast mentioned that God exists in a higher dimension, and the presence of alternate versions of known characters among his allies implies that God may be multiversal and unconstrained by time as in the normal dimension. This suggests that Saitama has been battling the same God every time he goes back in time. This could explain why Saitama has been called the abominable fist that turned against God, or someone who used God's power without taking God's hand. Some chapters of the manga have been completely redone by the author, with the most significant changes affecting the battle between Saitama and Garou. In the initial version of Chapter 164, Saitama reasoned with Garou, and they ended up having an improvised therapy session. In the revised version of Chapter 164, God appears before Garou and offers him his power, which leads Garou to unveil his new cosmic fear mode. In the following chapters, the radiation from Garou's body takes the lives of other heroes, and he then eliminates Genos. Saitama appears at last, as a red-colored rain falls over him, filled with rage. At the end of the fight, Garou regrets his actions and reveals to Saitama a technique for traveling back in time. Saitama manages to undo the ominous future and literally punch the power of God out of Garo. Many fans were disappointed with this ending, arguing that everything was resolved with a deus ex machina. However, I think there is more to it than meets the eye. Why would a perfectionist author, who frequently revises the same chapters, resort to such a contrived solution? To me, the inclusion of time travel was a deliberate choice by one because it will play a key role in the series later on, and he decided to establish it early in the story. And the author chose to introduce time travel precisely during Saitama's fight with an opponent who received power from God and managed to temporarily match him in strength. Now I would like to hear your opinion. Thank you for watching and see you next time.